I had one of my YouTube buddies ask about glass blowing tools that I use, so I thought I'd make a short video about some of those. The most frequent thing that I use, of course, are some sodium flare spectacles. Those are both didmium. You can also get plastic sodium flare, but you definitely have to have some sodium flare glasses. The next most common tool, outside of the torch itself, are just some stainless steel tweezers. These are 8-inch, and I use those almost every time I sit down at the bench. And then, of course, you have a marbling plates that you use. These are graphite, and we'll talk more about graphite tools later. I have used just a piece of metal for a marbling plate. That works too. Let's see, what else do we have? A little 3-corner file for scoring glass to break the glass rod. You can also get a more expensive one. This is a carbide knife. I actually bought this at Lowe's in the garden department, where they were selling them to sharpen shears and lawnmower blades and things like that. Works just fine. It's a carbide tip. And if you cut a lot of rod, it's probably worthwhile investing in a pair of rod cutters. They cut it clean and fast, easy to work with. I have a pair of glass shears, $6. Don't very often use them, but once in a while. Mini mashers. They also are not very expensive and come in pretty handy. Needle nose pliers. I bought a package of 4 or 5 different kinds of pliers at Lowe's. I think it cost $13. So I use those quite a bit also. Then if you want the big barbecue mashers, they start getting kind of expensive, but if you want to mash bigger pieces of glass, then those. Another tool that I use a lot of is a carbon rod. All this is a carbon welding rod. You can buy it at any or most welding shops. Then I sharpen the tip with a pencil sharpener, and then sanded it down with some fine grain sandpaper. And I use that a lot for shaping and what have you. Another tool that I made this like 30 years ago, and it's a little shaper reamer, and I found a piece of aluminum that's about 1/8 of an inch thick, hacksawed the shape out, then filed it down with a file, put it in a wooden handle. And even though I have several of the shapers you can buy, most of which are not very expensive, the one I made myself out of aluminum is the one I like the best and the one I use the most. Here's a center punch. It's good for some type of sculpting. You can make eyes with it, blow holes in fish, whales and what have you, dolphins, and various other things. I have an awl that I mounted in a wooden handle that I use for shaping and various things sometimes. I've got a stainless steel spatula. I don't even know where this came from. I've had it for years. And let's talk more about the carbon now, the graphites. 30 years ago, welding shops used to carry this block graphite like this. I probably paid $15 for 2 pieces of that. Nowadays you can't find it, and it's very expensive. But there are places you can get small pieces and make your own tools. This is actually off of a paddle that I made a long time ago. You can see the 2 holes where I mounted it on a handle, but I didn't use it, so I took the handle off and I used it for a marbling plate, and it's just sitting on top of a piece of extra work surface that I cut out of an extra piece to lay on so it doesn't mark up the table. Then I took another piece. It's a little bit smaller, a little narrower. It's probably 2 by 4 inches, and I mounted the the heat resistant surface to that with a couple of screws, and I use that to press glass. Like I may heat up a piece of glass, then I'll just use that to press it down with and flatten it and what have you. And I also hold it in my hand and shape with it and what have you. And then graphite paddle you can use the same way. I do have a graphite paddle, but it's not here right now. So now, as far as getting graphite to make things out of, I've got to move the camera. Arrow Springs sells what they call graphite remnants. It's like $8.50 a pound, and you can buy a couple of pounds of that. And it's kind of a crapshoot on what you get. But here's some examples. This is probably 2 by 4 inch block on top and probably 4 inches tall. And you could use that, for instance, to cut it off and make a marbling plate. Or you could make it into put a handle on it and make it into a paddle. Here's another nice sized chunk that I got from them that could work as a marbling plate as is. Some smaller pieces if you wanted to make some tools out of it. Or you could also use that to make molds if you want to use glass molds of some kind. I think Sunfire Glass has a couple of videos showing how you can use graphite molds to make leaf patterns and various things like that. Pretty neat. And then of course you get some junk that's just not usable for much of anything. These are little tiny little slivers of stuff. But something like that, you know, you can find uses for graphite like that. But it basically is remnants of where they make tools, leftovers, and they sell it for $8.50 a pound. So that's one place to get relatively inexpensive graphite. And it's very easy to work with. It's nasty to work with because it's very dirty. When you get to cutting and sanding and all that, you might want to take it outdoors to do it. Just because it is so nasty, but it is real easy to work with. You can drill it, you can cut it with a hacksaw, you can sand it. I usually kind of rough sand it with a rough grit and then go down to something like 220 grit or something like that to get it nice and smooth. And it works great. So anyway, I hope that that's helpful to you. And if you have any questions, well, I'll show you a couple more tools here. Just happened to think. Holding fingers to hold short pieces of glass that are hot that you want to attach and put in the flame. These things are rather expensive if you buy them from a store. I went to Ace Hardware, found some pickup fingers on a long thing that you use to go down and pick up screws you dropped and things like that. Cost me $3, $2.99. Brought it home, cut it apart, mounted it in a wooden handle. Then I wrapped a little stainless steel wire around it to open and close it. Works fine. And then there is the, what did I do with it? The rolling striker. There it is. I have no idea what I did with that. This is a tool to make a pattern on glasswork. And I have to give Sunfire Glass the credit for this because he told me how to make one. But if there are strikers that you use to light your torch, like this, some of these strikers, the striking mechanism inside is a little cylinder, which is right here, that little cylinder. And so you buy one for $5, take it apart, and then take the cylinder and mount it on some kind of a handle, then you can roll it over the glass to give it a textured pattern. And the way I mounted it is I stuck a 16-penny nail through it with a aluminum spacer right under the wooden handle, and it works great. So, and I think that is all my tools. So, hope it was helpful. Thanks.